let's talk about how to copy other successful apps to make it easier on yourself. Caveat, ethically. Anytime a new service or product is created and is quickly successful, 99.9% of the time, the creator of that product or service probably looked at something else and copied it, but just for their own needs, or at least copied certain components of it. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because you don't need to be reinventing the wheel in order to launch your app. You can speed up your process and see a lot more success if you just copy other apps. Now, in this video, we're going to go through two methods to copy other apps. The first one is going to focus more on the business and strategy side. Stick around until the end because the second one is going to focus on the technical and the feature side for your app. If you're new here, I'm Kristen over at Coaching No Code Apps. We help non-technical entrepreneurs build custom apps so they can launch app-based businesses or grow existing businesses all without coding. And if you're doing that, then subscribe to this channel. We publish new videos to help you do just that every single week. So before we jump into how to copy other apps, we first want to look at how not to copy other apps. And there are two specific ways I do not want you just directly copying other apps. The first is with specific features. So I do not want you looking at another app and seeing what the feature set is and then just recreating that app feature for feature and offering the same exact thing, because chances are you're going to see a massive flop with your app. Because if this app that you're trying to copy, we're going to assume it's successful. That's why you're copying it. Well, they're already successful. They already have their market share. They're already doing what they're doing. They're very far ahead of you. That doesn't mean you can't catch up or create a competing business. But if you're just going to flat out copy them, there's just no reason for why anyone would really need to use your app over theirs. They're already doing what you're trying to do it, but they're doing it a lot better. So don't copy an app feature for feature. We'll talk more about how to better copy certain features a little bit later. The second way I don't want you to copy other apps is just on pricing. I don't want you to look at another app, see what their pricing is, and say, well, I'm going to offer something similar and I'm going to price myself a little bit lower, or I'm just going to copy their pricing exactly. You might think that you're pulling a fast one on them because you're going to get everyone who thinks they're just a little too expensive, and that's just not really the way it works. When you are trying to compete on pricing, or if you're looking at another business or an app and you're reacting to their pricing and that's how you're structuring your own, instead of structuring it based on the value you're providing your users, really you're just racing to the bottom, right? The only person who wins this price gouging game is the one who's willing to operate with the smallest profit margins possible. You really don't want to play that game because there's only so far you can go before you truly hit the bottom, and there's nowhere left to go from there. Okay, so those are the ways you do not want to copy other apps. Now, let's talk about how you should be copying other successful apps. The first method we're going to talk about focuses more so on the business strategy side of things. Now, let's give this a little bit of wider context. When you're looking at another app or another business that might be a competitor in your market, you are never going to understand their big picture goals, or even their smaller, more incremental goals. You're never going to understand their finances, their budget. You're never going to understand their team. You're really never going to understand that business in any sort of in-depth way. You're only going to understand them from a surface level, no matter how much you dig. So if you're trying to copy or recreate or kind of stay one step ahead of these competitors in your market, just by looking at what they're doing, you're never truly going to understand why they're doing what they're doing. So if you're operating in a really reactive way, you could be leading yourself in a very bad direction. Because if you're just copying someone based on what they're doing because you think it aligns with what you're doing, you might be way off, right? Your goals might not even align. So you really need to understand that before you start looking at how to correctly and ethically copy other apps. Okay, so the first method for ethically copying other successful apps and businesses is to sort of copy and paste their validation. It's actually a really good thing to have alternative solutions within your target market. So, other apps, other companies who are solving the same problem. If they're doing it successfully and they are solving a similar problem that you're aiming to solve for the same group of people, if they're successful, if they have a share of the market and the business is growing, then you can assume that there is demand for that solution, right? When you're coming up with an app idea, you don't really want it to be some crazy, revolutionary one in a million idea, because there aren't that many new ideas in the world. There are definitely lots of new messengers, but not really ideas. And so if you're looking, doing target market research, validating your app, that type of thing, and you don't see other competitors, that's not necessarily a good thing. It's a better thing if you do see competitors, because you can copy their validation into your own business and kind of get a jump start because of it. So ask yourself, is this successful app that you are maybe studying a little bit, are they solving the same or similar problem for the same type of person as you? If yes, then I want you to copy that validation, meaning I want you to move forward with your app itself. So don't get stuck for the next year trying to figure out, is my app idea a good idea? If you can find that validation, then grab it and copy it, right? Move forward. But there is a right way to copy that validation, and there is a wrong way to copy it. Going back to what we very first talked about, we don't just want to copy that solution feature for feature, because we're not giving that target market any reason to come to us instead of the already successful app that we're copying. So you want to copy a little bit differently. What you need to do is find gaps or holes in the existing solution or solutions, and you want to create your solution that and fill those gaps or holes. All right, so let's dig a little deeper. Number one, how do you find those gaps or holes in the existing apps that are out there so that you can know what to build instead of just directly copying that app's features? Well, you can do this a lot of different ways. The easiest and lowest hanging fruit way is to just ask people within your target market what pain points or frustrations they're still experiencing, even when they have a solution that is solving the problem that you're also trying to solve. Now, I say the easiest way is to talk to them because I'm hoping you have existing access points into that market. Right? We don't really want to build a new business for an industry or a market where we have no experience or no existing contacts, right? It doesn't really make sense, because what are you really bringing to the table when you're doing that? So ideally, you want to have some existing contacts, right? So maybe you have colleagues or acquaintances, or maybe you're in Facebook groups, or maybe you're in real life groups, if those still exist, right? You have different access points where you can talk to people who are experiencing the problem that you're trying to solve with your app. If they're using another solution that's already out there, awesome. What's still frustrating for them? Well, you can make it not frustrating for them with your tool. If you're really not sure where to find these contacts where you can have conversations, think about online groups and forums. There are a ton of them out there for lots of different niches, but also think about, workshops, either online or in person, conventions, maybe coworkers or colleagues. There's lots of ways where you can get feedback. If you try, you can definitely find people who will give you feedback on the pain points they're still experiencing with the existing solutions out there. Okay, so you've thought through how to find what those holes or gaps in the existing solutions are. Now let's talk about different ways that you might be able to fill them so that you can have ideas on how you can differentiate your product. This can be anything from very technical components to very non-technical components. You can differentiate yourself based on the service you provide to your users. Maybe that's the pain point that people in your target market are still experiencing with the existing solutions. Maybe they just have really crappy service, and you can change that. Maybe you can change the model or structure of the business as a whole. So while we don't want to compete directly on pricing, maybe you can change the whole structure. So maybe the norm is for one user type to be the purchaser for the app. If you have a two-sided marketplace, maybe the supply side normally pays for the app. Well, maybe you have an idea on how you can add more value by flipping that and charging the other side. Another way to differentiate yourself is the segment of the market you actually address with your solution. So maybe you're solving a problem for a target market as a whole, a total addressable market, where you're looking at these other existing solutions. Well, maybe you build a very similar solution, but you segment off that total addressable market and you go after just a very specific segment. Again, though, be really careful with just copying features and be really careful with just copying or competing on price. It's probably not going to get you very far. If you want to take a deep dive into this, there's a book called Blue Ocean Strategy, and it talks all about differentiating your product, your company versus all the other ones out there. So while you can kind of copy and paste the initial validation, which is what we're talking about here, you really want to differentiate your app once you start building it and creating your business model as a whole. The basic concept is you can be in a red ocean where you're competing with the existing solutions in your market, and the ocean is red because there's lots of bloodshed with this competition for who can gain the largest market share. Or you can differentiate yourself from all your competition in some of the ways that we talked about, and instead put yourself in a blue ocean where there's none of that nasty bloodshed. Let's talk about method number 2 for how to copy other successful apps. Now we're going to get into the tech side, the feature side a little bit more, but again, we're not copying feature for feature, so let's go through what I mean here. We started out the very beginning of this video talking about how a lot of successful companies, they become successful because they don't reinvent the wheel. You know, there are going to be lots of similarities in your app compared to other apps, in your business as a whole compared to other businesses. And anywhere you can avoid reinventing the wheel, you should do that, right? You should avoid it because that means less time for you. So what you really want to identify are things that already work, and you know they work regardless of what another company's goals are or anything like that we talked about. You want to find the things that work and you want to copy those to save yourself some time. One of the best ways you can do this with your app is by looking at other successful apps and copying things like design and layout and navigation. Now, you don't just want to look at one single app and say, hey, that looks really cool, I'm going to copy that design. Instead, you want to find trends, because here's the thing when it comes to apps. You want to try to reduce the amount of thinking your users have to do as much as you possibly can, because anytime someone has to think about what they're doing or what they should do next or what they just did, you are creating friction. And the less friction you can have in a user's process or journey through your app, the better. The less friction, the more likely they are to stay on board. The longer they're going to stay on board, the more success they're going to have with your app. Therefore, the more they're probably going to talk about and share about your app. Now, we're going to go into a couple of different websites, and I'm going to show you what I mean. The first one we're going to look at is called webframe.xyz, which is essentially just a big collection of screenshots showing different processes on existing apps, many of which you have probably used. So if you look on the left-hand side here, you'll see different categories. So we have categories for landing pages, pricing pages, plans, login, intro, dashboards, forgot password. and so on. I mean, the list goes on. So let's go to onboarding, for example. So if we click on onboarding, basically if we scroll down, we'll see screenshots for different onboarding processes for different apps. Now, if you take some time and you look through how different apps handle their onboarding, you're going to find that most of them look exactly the same. When you've found what works with onboarding, there's no reason to change it, right? So if something's not broken, don't fix it. Well, there are so many apps with onboarding processes that eventually, we've kind of pinpointed the best way to onboard someone. So if you see lots of apps that are onboarding people in the same or similar ways, don't go and do something completely different. Mold your onboarding to copy that, right? So that's what I mean, where you're not going to literally look at the app and copy the design pixel for pixel, but you can look at someone's onboarding process or multiple apps onboarding process and look at the trend and copy that. Let's actually just go in and compare two different onboarding screenshot collections, and we'll see if we can find the trend and similarities so you can understand how to better copy these. So I'm just going to click on this first one here. And it looks like this is an active campaign onboarding to help someone set up their chat widget, right? So let's see here. Yeah, so this is basically taking a user through how to set up a chat widget when they have an active campaign account so that they can add it to different websites, pages, subdomains, and so on. So let's just take a high level look at this. We have a kind of like a progress bar here at the top that shows the main milestones. You've seen progress bars everywhere, right? And basically it's a mental thing, right? If the person who's going through the process doesn't know that there are 5 steps and you're just carrying them through and they get to the 4th step and they think, man, this is a lot of steps, and they're wondering, how many more steps are there going to be? Are there going to be 4 more? Are there going to be 8 more? How many more steps am I going to go through? They're thinking there. That's creating friction, too much friction. Instead, you can just show a progress bar and show the milestones here. Once they get to step 4 and they stop and think, this is kind of a lot of steps, they look forward and see, oh, I just have 1 more. I'm going to complete the step, right? So progress bar, that's a trend in onboarding. That's something that you might want to copy from these other apps. Now, we'll look into another one too and kind of compare and see, but another thing I would pull out from this is the onboarding in general here is not just showing someone the buttons they have to click in order to, use this part of the app. Now, we're looking at Active Campaign, which has lots of different facets and functionality within the app or the platform as a whole, and we're only looking at one here. But you can see that the milestones here are not just like a, hover here to see the function of this button, or hey, let me give you a 3-step pop-up that says, this is what the chat widget is. This is how it's gonna help you, and okay, now go off and create your own chat widget. Instead, it's taking someone through the actual setup steps. This is something I would really pay attention to if I were you. It's taking someone through getting started, how they want their chat box to appear, what they want their auto reply to look like, how to install the code, and how to test and launch. Now again, lots of different apps out there, lots of different use cases, so this is probably not going to apply directly to your own. But with that in mind, let's just look at another one here. So just keep that in your brain right now. And here, we'll go to the next one. Okay, so this is another chat widget, right? We have intercom here. Okay, so this one looks a little bit different. Let me move this. Okay, first thing, we have the number of steps, right? So we're reducing the amount of thinking here. We even have a time estimation. This is only going to take you 4 minutes, okay? So this is like a commercial break and you're going to have your chat widget set up. And then we have the steps for seeing what you learned. So there's an overview here, creating your messenger, getting to know how the messenger works, and now look, replying to a conversation from your intercom inbox. So again, we're not just giving a basic overview of this is what it is and this is where you find things. Now go set it up. They're actually taking you through the process of achieving a small win in the app. We won't go through more examples here because I'll let you do that on your own, but I did want to show you one other website, which is called UX Archive. And this is something similar where you can just go through the flows and the user navigation and pick up on those same trends. So remember that you're not copying design pixel for pixel or anything like that. You're just finding these trends that you can copy so you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and you can find ways to be successful with your app without having to do all the testing that these other bigger, more successful apps have already done. This is a major advantage for you because you might not have the budget right now to spend a ton of time just tweaking these little things and figuring out, I got one user on board and then they stopped right after that, or they left the app right after that. I wonder why. Let me go spend $5,000 on ads so I can run some tests. Yeah, you're going to still be doing a lot of research and development when you launch your app, but you can cut back on that by finding these ways to make your app intuitive right from the start to reduce that friction and to just copy what other successful apps are doing, and in a very ethical and very helpful way for your users. Now, we talked about blue ocean strategy a little bit earlier, and a book I would recommend to kind of drive this home is called Don't Make Me Think. I don't have a physical copy to show you because I have the Kindle version, but you can see here, if you read Don't Make Me Think, it's going to drive that point home where the more you pick up on these trends, the more intuitive you're going to make your app and the less work you're going to have to do because of it. This is something that we teach our own entrepreneurs who we work with in our Built to Scale program. When you're building the first version of your app, you're not trying to create really fancy designs and make your app like the sleekest looking tool that you possibly can, which might make you cringe and all of that. But really, you just want to have a very usable app that you can test with a group of pilot users and validate so that you can do a fuller market rollout. And this is the best way to do that, right? If you focus on usability for your design instead of aesthetics in the beginning, no, you're not going to be creating an ugly app, but you're going to be creating one where users don't have to think. They come on board, they go through the processes, and they achieve the wins that your tool is designed to give them. That's going to give you a lot more successful of an app and a business than if you spend the next year trying to make your app look pretty, right? So this is a really great way to copy other apps. Look at the trends in design and user experience and copy those. Okay, so we're talking about how to copy other people's apps so that you can be more successful. And the next thing I want you to do to see even more success with your app is head to coachingnocodeapps.com/app aligner. App-aligner. You'll see it on the screen and in the description below. Basically, you're here because you want to build an app that users will actually want to pay for. That's the important part. You're not here just to tinker around, maybe in the beginning, but ultimately you want to make money off of this, right? So you need to create an app that users are actually going to want to pay for. That's why we're talking about how to copy validation, how to copy trends in design so that you can do less work and have a more impactful app and therefore make money off of it, right? So if you head to coachingnocodeapps.com/app-aligner, then you can download a template and a free training that is really straightforward, honestly, because we don't like to complicate things, but it's going to help you create more value around your app. So it gets you focusing on the value your app is providing versus just the feature set. There is a lot of value in your app. You just have to know how to find it and talk about it. Right? That's what the app aligner is going to help you do. So it's going to help you identify the value and therefore scope the right app and build the right app so that you can actually get to the point of copying the user experience trends and all of that. So head to coachingnocodeapps.com/app-aligner. Grab that, and look, if you found this video helpful, if you could give it a like down below, we'd be very appreciative. It helps us help even more people build valuable apps and change their businesses, their careers, and their lifestyles. All right, I hope you found this helpful, and we'll see you in the next one.